Aha, we're live. Hello, everybody on my Patreon and Chris Learning Modulars Patreon page as well that's tuned in. This is just for you guys. It's going to stay exclusively for you guys. Just a bit of a hangout and a chat that I intend to do monthly. I've got Chris Meyer joining me from Learning Modular. How's it going, Chris?
Going really well. Out here in New Mexico in the United States.
Patreon page as well that's tuned in. Somebody's got a exclusively for you guys. Video window open. Chat that I intend to do monthly. I've got someone Chris, got the video open. Learning Modular. How's it going, Chris?
Going really well.
Endless loop. No, I'm muted audio-wise.
Somebody got.
Sorry, yeah, I just opened the tried to open the chat room, but I was getting some double feedback, so I'll have to leave the chat room, I think.
Yeah, leave it, just mute the video feed.
Right. Okay.
The little audio control mute button underneath. Mute that.
Yeah, you can watch it also. For anyone that's watching as well, the live chat to the right of the video, the three little dots, you can click pop out chat and pop out a chat window should you wish. Yeah, so sorry, Chris, how's it going?
It's going really well. Been playing around with percussion modules lately, and now I'm rearranged the system yet again. I think I'm on my 10th iteration this year of how the system's laid out, and having fun.
Yeah, good. And Ed, how's it going?
Yeah, going really well. As you know, I'm just sort of exploring into synth modular world. I'm an artist. That paints, that's looking at that direction. So yeah, busy at the moment because I've got a show in London coming up soon. So I'm just sort of trying to get everything together for that. So yeah, but I'm guessing you're busy too.
Yeah, totally. The mess of boxes and modules. Yeah, I'm stuck in middle of new baby world. Work being a little manic. I started and shifted sort of 4 different jobs at the same time as the baby came.
Wow.
I didn't really plan this. It's very typical of me. Didn't plan enough time to actually stop for a little bit. Said yes to too much, and now I'm paying for it. But such is life. All is good. So just to kick us off, we'll take questions in the Q&A for everyone that's watching. It's very much about you guys asking questions. But Ed asked me about effects for synths, be it the lovely Vostok behind him or modular or whatever, just effects for synths. Where were you kind of coming at from that, Ed? Are you wanting to kind of flesh out your effects or? Yeah,
so background is that around about 2 years ago, decided I wanted to get back into synthesis. Being an artist, painting to music, I wanted to compose my own music to paint to. So I got in touch with Tom because I seen this lovely Vostok behind me online, and got on really well with him. Unfortunately for me, he liked my artwork, so he swapped me Vostoks for a load of artwork. So that started my journey. And I've been around about 2 years with that and trying to learn synthesis again. I'm like slowly building my kit up. And like deciding, like listening to you, Sonic State, you know, all these guys, and deciding on what pieces of kits I needed to start. And I ended up with the Vostoks, Dreadbox, Erebus.
Oh, lovely.
Which, to be fair, it's got a lovely, dirty digital echo on that. It's beautiful. And I have to say, you know, I'm so glad I got that. I mean, it does sound awesome. And then I wanted sort of like at the middle of it, I wanted some sampling and sort of MIDI control. So I went for, after a big deliberation, went for the Digitacts.
Yeah, I've only heard good things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just starting to get to grips with it. The sound on it is really awesome. I couldn't believe it. So though that is all, and I also got this just the other day.
Oh, cool. Is it?
Yes, a Touche. Which what I'm going to try and do now. This is why I want the effects. This is what I'm trying to do now. This might seem a little bit bizarre, but I have an idea, and that is, I think that would be the perfect partnership with that. I can get all the CVs going out to a lot of modulation and get a lot going with that. And then I've got a, I don't know where to put it, I've got a scratch mixer. And my idea is to make that a sound effects box, affect it with a touche, and actually cut off and scratch with it. I know that sounds a bit of a bizarre concept, but that's what I'm trying to achieve with it. But I need decent effects for the Vostok, because it's, I mean, it's a real, I mean, it's got the MS-20 filter on that. Well, Tom's version of the MS-20 filter, like all his filters are a little bit sort of like different, aren't they? So, but it's just screaming out for effects. So I need to dive in for an effects pedal for it. And then it's just like the big world of effects. Where do you go? I mean, like Strymon, everyone's going Strymon, you know, that's the sort of gold standard. And then I'm thinking, well, you know, you haven't got any sort of CVs in or anything like that for that. And so I suppose my question is there anything as good as Strymon within the modular world? And if there isn't, what's good, what's not, and what would you, you know, what would you say as a newbie? What sort of effect would you go for?
I think to the question of anything as good as a Strymon, I think the issue with that in modular is the current draw. I think it's 350 milliamps positive and negative for the big Sky, if I remember right, which is half of some power supplies.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get anything else in the case. The only thing specifically designed to be like that, to my knowledge, Chris certainly let me know if you know any more, is the audio damage EOS.
Right.
I think that was the first kind of built on modern chips, high end. The plugin for that's fantastic. So you could get with the plugin and play around and see if that suits the kind of thing you're looking for. Yeah. I think there's an issue with that. A certain setting that will brick the processor, and you've got to read power on and off. So that's maybe not ideal. Yeah. What would you say to anything of that kind of quality? I guess Eventide Space, Big Sky.
I was about to say Space because I just saw again that an instrument has finished off his mod to put a Space into a Eurorack. And he's been spending a year on it, and he's got now voltage control over all the parameters and lots of control voltage input jacks as part of his remaking of the Eventide Space.
Right.
And one question I was going to ask you is, when you're talking about effects, it sounds like you're already really into the idea of being really gestural while you're playing. You know, do you want just set and forget effects, or is that going to be part of your performance, is being able to tweak and screw around with the effect while you're playing?
Yeah, I think, well, one of the, with the touche, well, and I don't know whether I can do this because I'm just in sort of putting together in learning mode at the moment. My idea was that I could affect the Vostok with all the CVs out, but then if I had something like, you know, a Big Sky or something like that, I could then, because you can double up with MIDI as well, so I can take MIDI line out, and then as I'm affecting the parameters with this, I can affect the effects as well. I mean, again, this is all I'm not too sure yet. You know, I want to plug it all in and find out. But the other one I was really interested in was the Strymon Deco. It's like a tape saturation sort of echo, combined echo. And although they've not got MIDI in for control on that, they have got a foot pedal in that you can assign to one of the parameters. But then I'm thinking, you know, is it good to go that route, or is it good to start looking at, you know, going the modular route and, you know, being able to affect it with CV and things like that?
For effects, I'm very much a mix of both. I have pedals from playing guitar, and I really like using pedals with the modular. Interfaces like the ALM SBG, the Dopefer A138D. I'll find some of the images of these and pull them up. There's also the Chaos devices, Sewestopol. Yeah. There's a few that handle the level in and out, the differences. That's something to be wary of with guitar pedals. Things like the Space and the Strymons can take it. They've got the headroom, but a lot of the cheaper pedals just will distort like crazy with either line level from a synth or Euro level, which is even higher.
That's interesting, because at the start I thought like Zoom do like this really cheap pedal, and it was only, there were on YouTube there was only sort of a guitar sort of going into it, and they were pitching it against the Strymon and that. Of course, you can't really tell on YouTube because of compression and that, but I mean, it was holding up relatively well. Not obviously as creamy, I don't think, as the pedals. But have I got to be wary of something like that not having the headroom?
Yeah, certainly with Eurorack levels. I'm not sure what the Vostok runs at. It might be line level, but that's still going to be a bit, well, certainly a lot hotter than a guitar would be.
Yeah,
it won't be an issue with any higher end pedals. The cheaper stuff, kind of sub £100, sub 150, which is a lot of great effects for under £100 in pedal world, but they can not break them, but just clip, you know, so you can't get, there's no way of you getting a clean sounding unless you attenuate the signal.
Yeah, right. Since you're using an effect loop module, like what Ben was talking about, like the Chaos Swastopole, then the headroom's not an issue because you've brought the modular down to a guitar level, and then the pedal says, oh, this is a world I'm comfortable in. I can do everything I used to do with the guitar, and then brings it back up to modular level, going back into it. Right. So if you're going to get serious, you got to kind of think, am I putting my effects after my synths, or do I want it to be in the middle of a patch so that I can then use the filter in my synth to affect the sound coming out of my echo? If you want it to be in the middle of a patch where it's really interactive with the sound, then you're going to need to have an effects loop for these external pedals. If it's just post-processing, like an echo reverb on the whole thing, you just take your whole modular out, drop it down to line level, then just feed into your effects, even through the effects zone of the mixer or something like that.
Yeah. So I was looking in the chat, and you know, a lot of people are sort of saying clouds, morphogene, that type of thing. I mean, they all sound really, really good when I've heard them. What your takes are on them, or would you go maybe for an external pedal first?
Go on, Chris. You go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm personally, my own bend is I like having any effects as modules, because then I have a lot more control over what I do with the sound of them. Like I was playing around with the bass patch earlier. If I bring up just a normal state phase shifter on it, I'm just stuck with what that pedal can do in terms of like a sine wave fluctuating that. But if I go ahead and say I've got a module of a phase shifter, and I bring something like my mod wheel into the amount, then I can perform the sound. And I've got a lot more I can do now by making it a patchable thing and bring the envelopes and the LFOs and everything, or even the control interface, like my controller here, to control the sound rather than just saying, well, that's what the pedal does. I'm stuck with it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it would be a mix of both. In terms of my own use, the tip-top ZDSP, which does run on an old FV1 chip. There's lots of cheap karaoke pedal type stuff that uses it. It's not a mega powerful processor compared to things like the new Make Noise stuff and new Mutable. It just sounds amazing. It just takes cards. It's rather annoying they're not SD cards or a USB key that you kind of slot in the front. It takes these, I've got them here. So the module on the front takes these little cards that just, they run the program. There's a little chip on the back that essentially tells the module what to do. It would be nice if it was, USB sticks or something like that, or SD cards, but the Halls of Valhalla card is just stunning. I think it's my favourite reverb. Not the most high-end. The Big Sky is much clearer. I guess transparent is the right word for me. Really like that. It just adds space without any colour. The Halls of Valhalla card on the ZDSP is definitely warmer and thicker, which is probably more similar to an Eventide Space. That seems to be more dense in its kind of frequency content of all the reverbs.
Now, I'm curious about is with you, Ben, or if anyone in chat has heard the new 1010 stuff, the people who do the Bitbox and stuff like that. He was also doing a version of his Bitbox that was just effects.
Bitbox, yes.
A grid of many different effects you could call up, and then, of course, it's loadable with different effects.
Is this the one that does the sampler as well?
He's using the same hardware and giving it 3 different personalities depending on what software it's on.
Yeah, because I was looking at it, I thought the sampler looked good and that. And then I looked at the effects, and that was one that I was interested in. But I couldn't really see online, I couldn't really see many sort of great demos or anything about it. So I wasn't too sure you know, what the sound quality was like on that. Have you heard that, Ben, at all?
No, I haven't. I think they do suffer as a company 1010 for that. I think they do need Chris, myself, you know, James Siegler, one of the other video guys. They need to get these out there and get them presented better than they currently are. Or send them to all of us. I'm sure we'll all be happy to have one. The effects box, I'll just pull up a screen share of that one. So the module itself, the bitbox was the sampler, and it would run, it will take Ableton.als files and load up sessions with all the clips in and their warping, which is kind of a stroke of genius for integration, I think. Taking a kind of cut down Ableton Live set out in the modular case. Effects box reminds me of, with this kind of screen, where you can, there's all these jacks underneath that will gate on and off these different effects. Pitch shift, distortion, bit crusher, filter, ring mod, vinyl effects. It reminds me of this plugin Effects Tricks by Sugar Bytes, which had this grid that would sequence left to right. And you can see like the red blocks and the orange blocks. It looks a bit like the old Snake game on a Nokia phone. So as the sequencer's playing, it's turning on and off per step these different effects. And I imagine throwing a lot of gate CVs at effects box does a similar thing. You know, kind of heavy CVing of things on and off. All these modules, I guess it's a nice bonus is one way of looking at it. Slightly annoying for me. Seem to do more if you put the micro jack MIDI cable in under that left bottom knob there where I'm wiggling the mouse around. People can see it. So if you're using MIDI controllers, you get more out of it. Same with the Synthbox software and the sampler, I believe. I kind of always feel cheated when they're there.
I have to say, I just I like the look of all of those. It's just, again, it's just like you said, there's just not enough good content or obviously sort of like marketing on their behalf to get that out there to show the beauty of them. I mean, it's like I've been like, I want more, I want to know more about that, because 3 of those in a row, you know, your effects, your sample and that, I mean, it looks to be sort of a powerful setup, but you know, what does it sound like, and what's it like in real time use, and is the touch screen laggy? I mean, it's all this stuff we sort of don't know at the moment. I mean, are they fairly new to market, and do you think they're just a bit careful with who they're seeding it out to at the moment with maybe their software, and they're waiting for it to mature, or is it just a case that they don't tend to get themselves out there, Ben?
Well, I met, I'll have to excuse, I forget his name. I met him at Super Booth. Yeah. For the first time. I'd just seen Bitbox announced before we went to Super Booth. Obviously met lots of people. I can't remember everyone's name. It might be Andrew at Bitbox. And I don't know, he wasn't aware of what I was doing, which I never have any ego about, you know, you should know who I am. But that's a very different experience at Super Booth from what most people are saying. A lot of people are aware of the DivKid video thing. It didn't seem to be when I introduced myself, which, again, I've no ego, that's fine. So maybe just not as in touch with that world. I think he has Dark Place manufacturing them for him, which is Maleco's manufacturing facility. They handle a few companies like the WMD do. He's got a Scottish guy that's representing him that was also at Super Booth, and he came to Sound on Sound magazine's Synthfest, and he was there with the Bitbox stuff, but he couldn't answer all my questions about the products, and I only kind of had 5 minutes between filming footage of other people. He just kind of caught me as the camera went off and we were setting up with someone else. So I'm not quite sure. I know he used to work with Apple, I think, and the kind of Scottish representative was singing his praises about how he's a genius, this guy, which may go along with it not being aware of the scene a little bit. The more kind of genius out there designers do seem to be socially not as tuned in. It could be that. I could be making big sweeping statements that are entirely wrong.
But you're right that people think very highly of Glenn Darcy of Arturia and dragged me over to come see what he's doing. He was a big fan of his as well. But you know, a lot of these people who make these modules are 1-2 person companies doing it in their kitchen, and they don't have a lot of spare money. And the idea of here, just take a dozen modules and seed them to a bunch of people to do videos, you know, that's a lot of their cash flow to go do that. And I can see why a lot of them are reluctant to do that. But yeah, I get kind of bugged at the lack of musical context demos out there. You just can't really tell what something does.
And that's the trouble, though, isn't it? It's catch-22 if you are a company like that, because if you can't afford to seed them out, then the payback for that is there's people like me sort of thinking, oh, I really like that, but you know, do I want to drop that amount of money on something that I haven't heard, you know, or seen, or it being tested? I think even if you even if they can't get him out there to do some half decent videos yourself, you know, at least that sort of gets the message over, doesn't it? You know, but I really, if it was good sounding, I quite like the look of that, Ben. But again, I think it's maybe trying to find one and having a listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, for you, Edwin, anyone in the chat, feel free to just keep firing stuff at us. We're all watching the chat, and we'll pick bits up as we go.
Yeah, I needed someone to in the chat to fix my failing memory. I'm trying to remember who's a small manufacturer, does black and gold modules. They all have touch interfaces. Like one even had spikes sticking out of the front of them.
Is it Error Instruments?
Error Instruments, right? And he just, I think, did a GoFundMe on a pair of effects modules that had among them reverbs and tape effects, things like that. But then also they had touchpad interfaces on the front where you could really modify what they're doing right from the front panel of the module. And those looked really intriguing.
Okay, Error Instruments is Paul Tass, who I met at the first Super Booth and then saw again. He was great, a lot of fun, Paul. They're a shop in the Netherlands, actually, Error Instruments. I'll pull up their site. But they are working on their own modules as well, as far as I can see. They're working with This Is Not Rocket Science as well on something. I'm not quite sure what. There's a lot of, there's the spikes.
Yeah.
Module. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's theirs and what isn't in terms of on the site, but they've a lot of kind of interface type stuff. I think there's a lot of lo-fi effects from them. A lot of kind of circuit bent chip type stuff.
Yeah, the stuff I heard, the reverb and effects, you know, they were on the dirty side, but they weren't like bad trying to be hip. They were usefully grungy.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you mean. In terms of ideal world for effects, for me, and probably for you as well, Ed, would be a little bit of both in terms of modular and output. Are you wanting this space over the whole thing, or is it, as Chris said, is it all wanting to be this gestural palette that you control?
Well, I suppose it's a bit of both, really. I mean, I'm really interested in coming up with this sort of effects. I mean, the Vostok's, I don't know, because I haven't, you know, messed with a load of modular, but for me, it's just great at weird sound and effects. Although that's perhaps the only thing I can get out of it at the moment, maybe. But it seems to be good on that, and so I'm trying to use it for its strengths. And I really like the idea of having a lot of control over it by the touche and doing a lot of sort of modulation stuff with it. And hopefully, you know, bringing that movement in with the effects as well. And I suppose that's actually where I can, the touche maybe is the missing piece for me, that I can, my first effects may be a pedal, because if I can affect that pedal over MIDI and then, you know, affect it from the touche, then I've got all those sort of modulation effects, but, you know, coming over MIDI as well. So that's particularly what I want to do for that. But of course, going forward, I'll probably want effects, you know, just on certain synths and maybe effects on, you know, the overall sort of sounds as well, which brings me into another question, which I want to go on from there. I mean, we'll clear this one first, and that is sort of compression effects on the end of the chain, And I know that is it the guy who's using the Play one? Is it at the moment the techno guy?
VCO ADSR.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, I know you were saying that the sound coming from that was creamy smooth and really well put together, and I was thinking, well, you know, do you invest in something like that, which is a lot of money, but is that going to bring all these disparate sounds together and blend them in, you know, a really sort of gel together sound? And you know, is that worth looking at as well? So I'm sorry, I'm throwing tons of questions at you at the moment. So I want to know about effects, I want to know about Interchain, I want to know about mixer. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm looking at all aspects at the moment and trying to find my way through, you know, maybe what are the best effects, and then what is going to be the best for gluing all these sounds together, bearing in mind that the Digitact, the sound is so well produced on it. I haven't really sampled much in there myself at the moment, but what comes out of it is really well produced, and then I blend my modular with it and it just blows over it, you know, and I'm thinking, right, okay, how do I bring these sounds together? Because I think obviously the frequencies in the modular are just much more wider than the compressed sounds in the Digitact.
Does the Digitact have a live throughput? Can the inputs just be mixed in live and left open, like a mixer channel that's playing alongside?
No, I think you can do that with the Octatrack, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I don't think anyway at this stage you can do that with Electron. I have to say the effects in here are beautiful. The distortion, the overdrive is really something special, and I sort of wish that I could plug more things through it, but that's the Octatrack, and I don't fancy. I think I'd probably bash my head against a brick wall at the moment with the Octatrack because I've got so much to sort of take in. But yeah, that would be lovely if I could take the sounds through the Digitact as well. But I don't think that's a possibility at the moment.
Mm. What are you? So just thinking about the setup as a whole, have you got a mixer that you're going to run everything through?
Yeah, so I've got my old Mackie mixer, which is the it's years old. It's the 1402 VLZ Pro. It's about, I don't know, about 15 years old, something like that. So
it's funny that you mentioned Mackie, because I still have my Mackie 1604 over here, and when I played live, part of my compression was basically just overdriving the hell out of it. Is I had a lot of individual channels from loops and all that jazz, and I just drove it really hard for that old Roy Thomas Baker sort of wall of sound sort of vibe. And I tended to use that or intelligent saturation as much as I use compression. Compression is important because, as you say, you program a beautiful sound in your synth, it's this beautiful high dynamic range thing, and you try to mix it in with these, say, sample drums that have already been compressed to death. They just don't sit next to each other. So I really search out pleasant saturation as much as I do compression personally. That's just my own approach. Like when the mixer I have up next to my drums in the upper right corner is I've moved the Verbos scan and pan up there, because not only is it a stereo mixer, it has really lovely smooth saturation when you overdrive the inputs. A lot of these things just have really harsh clipping when you overdrive them, but that's one where I can just keep pushing more into it, and it doesn't sound like you're going through a fuzz pedal. It's just getting, you know, hotter.
Yeah, I like that. That's my approach as well, I think, to dynamic control. Lots of little stages of little bits of saturation serves the same effect. You could do that with a mixer. I'd look for probably a pedal for first and foremost in terms of the original question, something to slap over the send and return on the mixer. A couple of studio tricks that work for gluing things together. If you imagine a band, you know, typical pop band recording, the drums might have hired out a really big space because you need a lot of room for drums. The guitarist might have recorded at home, the vocalist's in a dead vocal booth, effectively a cabinet that they're singing in. Using a fake room reverb that goes across everything does help just gel and make everything sit. If everything's as dry as possible, really tiny bit in the background. I'm not quite sure how you do it in modular. It'd be possible. My trick I used to use with electronic drums was to send them all to a convolution reverb, so it sounded like it was in a space. I used to use the impulse response from Frank Zappa's Live Room that came with the Audio Ease reverb plugin. and then treat that as a room sound. So everything goes into that as if the band were all in that room together, all these electronic drums, totally dry off the drum machines. And then I'd compress it and treat it like if I was recording the drums and that was the room mic. So everything would get squashed, and then I'd sit that way back underneath everything. But everything just has this layer underneath. Everything's exciting the same space. You could do that with a reverb off the mixer.
Okay, so probably a good first effects to plug for, being that my Erebus has got the delay on it anyway, so that's sorted out. Do you think then just a good reverb?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Big Sky, I can only speak for the Big Sky, not the Blue Sky. They are different algorithms, for anyone wondering. When I saw the Strymon Blue Sky, the kind of smaller one, and then the Big Sky, I did think it's just the baby brother of the Big Sky. They're completely different algorithms, so they do sound different. If have you got a music shop near you where you can actually take the Vostok with you, or the Erebus?
Well, I live in Hereford, so no is the answer to that. But I'm originally from Birmingham, and I go there quite a lot. So I was thinking actually, there's Draft Audio and people like that. I haven't been there, but I think they've got some good kit in there. So I don't know whether they've got effects, but there's obviously quite a few sort of larger ones in Birmingham that I probably could actually just take the Vostok down and whack it through. I suppose that is going to be the best idea, isn't it?
I'd take it down, yeah. I mean, I once turned up to Curry's, which is a UK electronic retailer, dishwashers, fridges, PCs, all that kind of stuff, with my laptop and my sound card and a rucksack full of cables, and said, I've seen that you've got a Logitech 5.1 system. I'm currently in my final year of university, and I don't want to keep having to travel to Huddersfield to use the surround sound room. I know these aren't going to sound amazing, but can I set up and see what this Logitech speaker system's like? And they accommodated. They let me do it. I got some really weird looks, and I think if I wouldn't have bought it, they'd have been really angry. But I cabled up the 5.1, and they're only, cheap little PC speakers, but it did the job. I just wanted at home to be able to spatialize these sounds, and then rig the monitors up to do the actual kind of sound design for this project in my final year of uni. And it worked. I think shops are quite accommodating. I think if they know you're actually going to leave with a pedal, they'll let you go in. I'd maybe take the Erebus because it's smaller, but I think you'll be fine for that.
Yeah, on a slow weekday, it's really boring to sit a store. So anything that makes their day more interesting, they actually like.
Yeah.
But one analogy I was going to use that, since you're a painter as well, you know how some people will then put a glaze over a finished painting to help unify everything by maybe putting a tint over the whole thing. Yeah. That's exactly what Ben's talking about by putting everything in the same reverb room. It unifies it with that glaze that's all the same color, so it helps sit together. And a new module, because I'm very modular focused, obviously, that I'm really excited about is AGH Synth has a new finishing module coming out that's going to be EQ, an exciter, and a reverb all in stereo in a module. And I think like a combination of a compressor in front of that to go with what Ben was saying, and then into this finisher is just going to be the ultimate thing to really improve the recordability of a lot of modular systems. I'm really excited. I've got blank panels in my system waiting for it to come, hopefully before Christmas. Because I think
that sounds super, super interesting, doesn't it? That really sounds like it'd be a really lovely end of chain sort of effect to go with.
Yeah, precisely. Because also having EQ in the whole mixture also. Now, where the hell did you get a picture of the front panel, man? I've been looking for that up on Modular Grid, etc. I just emailed Alan today saying, Alan, where the hell is this stuff, man?
From Alan, it's when I did the video with him at Synthfest. I think he's changed it from Finalizer to Finale REQ. The EQ is only on the left channel, though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, there is a limitation. He did say it on the video. I can't quite remember which, that part of it is only going to process on the left entirely mono.
Yeah, I think the EQ in front of it was mono. I don't know if the enhancer was mono or stereo. But
I'm sure that, because it would kind of be silly to plug mono in and equalize one side, like the left channel, but not the right. I'm sure it feeds left in. So it does. Oh, yeah. It does left in to stereo out. Yeah,
that's what L mono is it's either the left or it's normal to.
Yeah, mono in, stereo out. If you have a left-right signal, though, the EQ won't affect the right signal. So it's great at taking a typical mono Euro rack environment, adding some EQ, some finalizing, some enhancing and saturation, and then giving you a stereo effect over the output. If you're already in stereo, unfortunately, you lose the EQ on the front end of that, which is a little bit of a shame. But certainly Alan's own system and a lot of Euro voices are entirely mono, so it makes sense.
Yeah, that's the conversation I get in with Alan sometimes about his modules, which are fantastic. Is but I'm not mono. I have got at least 4 voices going on in my system, and it's like, I need 4 of your V scales. I need multiples of all these things.
But things like thinking of expression, something like the make noise herb verb would be really good, I think, especially with the touche.
Yeah, I was wondering about like verb and sort of morphogene and that type of thing. I wonder what you. I mean, I suppose actually my question is, what would be your top 3 pedals that you would go for, and what would be your top 3 favourite Eurorack effects?
Oh, if you ask me tomorrow, the answer will be different. But pedals, I would go Big Sky for every kind of gorgeous reverb. There's a fantastic tape delay on the Big Sky, the magneto mode, and you can change the amount of tape read heads, and you can also spread them out, so you get all this kind of multi-tap delay. It's absolutely brilliant. Big Sky. What's on the pedal at the minute? Something from Earthquaker Devices, but I'm not quite sure which. The transmitter is very good. Some of their wackier, more out there spatial effects, I think you'll really like. They've got expression ins as well. A lot of the Earthquaker Devices stuff.
Have you heard anything by Crazy Tubes? Because the Dreadbox are using their splash reverb in a lot of their modules at the moment. I think their White Line uses their splash reverb in. I wondered whether you'd heard it.
It's the first I'd heard of them with Dreadbox, actually. I tell you what, my 3 pedals will be Big Sky, something from Earthquaker Devices, and then an old analog delay, like a BBD delay chip thing, like, oh God, I'm not going to reach it, and all that stuff. Something with a lot of character and a lot of top end roll off. I love those dark kind of vintage churning delays.
So would like Mooga Fuga sort of pedals, anything like that, sort of be part of it, do you think?
I don't have any, which is why I didn't bring them up, but yeah, probably. The mini Fugas, the delay is very dark, actually. A lot of top end roll off, maybe a bit too much for me, but yeah, you can't go wrong with the Mooga Fugas, I don't think. Even the cheaper, like mini micro pedal type stuff, like is it Mua MOORE, I think. I've heard a few of those, and they're great, and they're £50-60. It's not a lot.
Yeah, I've just seen someone in the chat room, actually, sorry, I'm not keeping an eye on the chat room, talk about the Zoom MS70 CDR. That was the pedal I was looking at. It's mega cheap. And a lot of people say it's fantastic and Zoom are underrated. The chat room just said, what's that, $10 for that pedal? A fantastic pedal for $10, wow.
100. You missed a 0, 100.
But I think they go for about £60 brand new, actually. But then I was thinking, wow, what are you going to get for that? Is it going to be that good? I think there's got a lot of algorithms in there, reverbs and delays. But I did have a look at that. Yeah,
there's also the Eventide H9, which will pretty much do everything at very high quality. That's something to look at. And also, TC Electronic are bringing out a new range of smaller, cheap stomp boxes, which, being TC Electronic, I imagine will sound very good. Music Group bought TC Electronic, for anyone that doesn't know, which is, to some people, the devil, Uli Behringer. That wasn't my take on Uli when I met him in person, but yeah, Music Group that own Tannoy and Behringer and TC Helicon own TC Electronic, and on That Pedal Show, the YouTube channel, That Pedal Show. Fantastic guitar channel, but they really dig into effects. Well worth watching, whether you like guitar or not. In fact, let me pull that up because that's a really good thing to be checking out.
I think Behringer just bought a new effect set, haven't they, for under? I think it's around about £90, something like that, and that's a multi-effects. It's not a pedal, but like they mentioned it on Sonic State a few weeks ago, actually, and I think they've got the TCE electronic algorithms in.
I've not seen it, but certainly, well, for you, Ed, and anyone else, highly recommend That Pedal Show. That's the name of the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Be there, pick and mix free dream delays. They look at the new Boss Angry Driver, expression pedals. You know, they've got artists in. They do a little bit on amps and guitars sometimes, but there's loads of stuff in their 4-fab vibratos. You know, they do kind of these delay rundowns where they'll have free tape delays in and they'll pitch them against each other. Or and it's not so much, you know, this is the winner, this is the best. They you know, they'll go through everything, warts and all, and give you a real good comparison of stuff.
So I was thinking then, if I look at a good reverb to maybe put on the whole of the mix at the end to do a bit of gluing together, what would you say, again, are your top sort of picks at the moment for modular effects that you've given me one already that might be good for affecting with the touche and just a little bit sort of left field?
Okay, I'll jump in on those three and then see what Chris says. I think the tip-top ZDSP, because you can chuck all these little cards in and make it do several different things. One really nice thing with the ZDSP, the clock input, is the actual sampling rate clock the chip is running at, not a kind of tempo-based clock for your delay times. So you can put in an audio rate oscillator at, you know, above human hearing range, 40 kilohertz, 44 kilohertz, and it's running at its top quality. But you can bring that sampling rate right down and introduce some alias in. You can turn the chorus card into the most gorgeous underwater reverb, because it's pulling all the delay times down as the sampling rate comes down in the chorus algorithm. And you just get this wash with this kind of strange top end, and it's really cool. You can really bend and hack that. Probably the herb verb for expression. I'll pull the image of the herb verb up. There's so much to go at on it. It's kind of hard to not suggest it, really. Even just using touche over the mix amount, so that, you know, as the filter opens and an envelope shape changes on the Vostocks, you have a bigger reverb. You get a CV output on the reverb as well. It's an envelope follower over the reverb effect. So you could then use the length of that reverb that's maybe influenced by the touche to then influence the Vostocks as well and create this nice kind of feedback, whole system talking to each other. You can clock it in time. There is a tempo input, and then the pre-delay becomes a multiplier or divider of the tempo. So if you want the pre-delay to be an eighth note behind the riff that you're playing or the gesture, it's just really good. I don't think it's as lush and warm, anywhere near as lush and warm as the ZDSP with the Halls of Valhalla card, but way more kind of expressive and fantastic, as Chris was saying, in the middle of a patch. It's not necessarily just the reverb at the end of the chain. And then it would be DLD for me. I think without a doubt, I've said this quite a few times, and someone said, you're being paid to say this because you say it all the time. I'm definitely not. I wish they would, but they're not. The 4MS DLD is just absolutely stunning. Let's pull up a picture of that for anyone that's managed to miss it. It's a dual delay that is also kind of hybrid looper at the same time. I have a lot of fun with this. So each side, it can be used as stereo or two mono, so run in series, get one short delay effect and then plug it into the other side. You can do mono in, stereo out. One side can be a looper, one side can be a reverse delay. You've 2 minutes and 54 seconds, if I remember right, per side. So you can capture this really big live organic thing that's happening and just have a really long time that you can manipulate. you've CV over pretty much everything other than the dry-wet mix. But the way to get around that is the delay feed has CV. So it's like a VCA on the input to the delay. So you can turn the mix up and have the delay feed off and have no delay come through. So you can kind of CV a dry-wet blend. All the reverse can be gated on and off. There's a send and return. So you could put the verb in the feedback path of the delay. Yeah, really, really good. I really enjoy that module in pretty much everything I throw at it. What about you, Chris?
Answering in the chat. Yeah, I mean, you've already you hit all the modules, and you say, "Can you think of anything else?" But what I was going to say is, if you're specifically talking about the touche, using it to manipulate what you're doing, then definitely the reverb. It's going to be as lush as an Eventide reverb or as a Strymon stomp box. But if you're wanting to manipulate it, then the reverb's the way to go. What I was going to say about effects pedals, when you were talking about that earlier, since it sounds like you're budget conscious, is wait till NAMM or Frankfurt Music Messe when they announce the newest model, then hit your music stores, because they're trying to clear out the last model really cheap to make room for the new model.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
And you can get stuff that has just incrementally fewer features for a third off or half off. So definitely don't overlook old effects. I mean, in terms of reverb, a lot of people just don't believe I've got 4 original Alesis MIDI verbs, the ones that look like a plastic soap dish. They should not work. They're 12-bit. They're 30-some odd case amp, the densest, nicest reverb I've used on percussion and synths. There's just something about the sound of those, and you can buy them well under 100 used on eBay. I've got 2 MIDI verbs and 2 MIDI effects that I use in my live rack, and I use to process stuff here just because it's a nice, dense reverb. I really hate thin metallic reverbs. I want something that's got a lot of density to it if I'm processing the whole track. I sometimes use the Zoom stuff for that as well, too, some Zoom Studio stuff. But otherwise, I'm old school. I still have a Lexicon Prime Time in the rack and stuff like that.
Yeah, rack gear's a one to potentially explore as well. Things like the MIDI verb, a lot of the Aphex Twin, like the ambient work stuff, some of that was there the Alesis Pico verb, the kind of half rack, micro rack thing. I think that was on there.
Yeah, third. They were third wide.
Yeah, the Boss micro rack stuff is very
half
much
rack.
similar.
Yeah.
The kind of 90s reverb stuff. I think they sound great on synths. You start running vocals and guitars and pianos through, and you can kind of hear their flaws a bit more, I think, on acoustic instruments. But they do work really well. I'd get some sort of PT delay as well. I've got a real soft spot for PT delays. Just because the chips break up at longer delay times, and that noise in itself can become part of the texture and performance.
It's funny you mentioned that, because one of the modules I've been playing around with my synth is the Roland 578, which is based on the old Roland 178. And something that Josh Hawley did in the design of the Bucket Brigade delay in it is, instead of keeping it safe so you would never hear the clock noise, he just opened up the timing on it so you could slow it way down, but then the clock noise creeps into the sound. And there's a lot of people who are complaining, like, how dare you allow me to get a setting that makes this sound bad? And his thing was, it's a module. Go process it through another module to filter out the clock noise. Or if you want it, here it is. I've exposed it to you. It's a module. It's not like a safe rack effect with 5,000 presets where you can never go wrong.
But that was also meant to be more of a chorus, wasn't it, in the original? That particular effect was meant to be shorter delay time.
It's far better as a chorus. It's barely a slapback delay, but unfortunately the module is called delay. Yeah.
The Erica Sims Fusion series delays like that as well. It's fusion, delay, chorus, flanger. I can't remember what it said. The original one did just say delay as far as I remember, but you struggle. You've got to offset the CV input to try and get some sort of audible echo as opposed to a kind of doubling effect.
Talking about Erica Sims, I'm just in love with their stuff at the moment. I think at some stage I'd like to make a move on some of their equipment, but taking it back to the mixer, I've got my first gig on the 16th, which I haven't even got anything ready for it at the moment, but that's beside the point. But I'm going to be lugging all this equipment around, and the Mackie mixer is you know, a fair old size. And I was looking at the Erica Synths tube mixer that you've done a bit on, and I wondered whether that would be a good, because at the moment I haven't got much. So I've got the Electron, which would admittedly be stereo out. I've got the Erebus and the Vostok, and that's all I've got at the moment. So would that Erica Synths mixer be a good call, do you think?
You might need some level kind of pumping up into it. There's the module for anyone watching. You could, I mean, it would do stereo, because you could just treat it as a left side 3-channel mixer and a right side 3-channel mixer. And split the Erebus into both sides, and also do the same for the Vostoks, and then take the Digitact in stereo.
Yeah,
Scanner used it. There's a video on my channel with Modular Podcast talking to Scanner after he played at Modular Meets Leeds, and spoke about this. It's got a lovely gluing kind of effect to everything, so I think it would suit in that regard. It did push into kind of audible drive at one point. With Scanner, which, whether it was intentional or not, I'm not 100%. The set was entirely improvised, and as usual with Scanner, it was glorious, as if he'd planned the whole thing. But yeah, it might just be a level issue. That's expecting kind of Eurorack oscillator levels, which have about a 10-volt swing in terms of voltages. So you'd need a lot of input modules potentially to be right up at the working voltages that would expect. But
right.
If you get hold of Erica Synths, they do some custom work for people. I saw they'd made a panel for 3 Pico DSPs, I think, or 3 Pico drums, and they'd kind of made a custom module that just had the 3 behind. They might even make an input, obviously at a price, but they may make a version that has enough gain on tap to get it up to the levels it wants to work at.
Yeah,
there's a few modules available that have a few inputs dedicated to being line level. Things like even Endorphins has one where one pair of the outputs can take a line level back in for a loop. And the reason that I'm using the Verbo Scanapan up there is there's just a ton of gain on the inputs. We can bring line level up to level if you want to. So you do have to kind of look for that feature.
Right. Yeah, I was watching your video on performing live the other day, Ben, and Scanner was on there, wasn't he? And you were talking about it then, and he was saying that because it was the first time you used it, it kept it very low, and it didn't tend to drive too much. But was there still a little bit of driving going on in that performance, even though he got the low levels on it?
Yeah, somewhere. Now, if you watch the there's videos of his full performance, a kind of interview rig rundown. If you put Scanner Modular Meets Leeds in YouTube, it'll come up. It's a red thumbnail. And someone commented saying, "Oh, what's the distortion at 20 minutes and 17 seconds or wherever it is?" It definitely wasn't me. I got kind of called out as if it was camera audio. There was loads of headroom on my recording, so it wasn't me. That's not to say it wasn't the mixer in the venue. I think it was the module, but I'm not sure. Scanner said he didn't think it was the module. But if you listen to that set, he's taking it from all these different sampled textures to some live synthesized parts, a kind of Terry Riley arpeggiated line that he played with over these sampled textures. And it does certainly all glue together. If you get the video up and you just skip at kind of 30-second increments, there's an incredible amount that he went through in this set. But it does all glue when you listen to it as a whole.
So, but I might have trouble with this because of the different levels between the Electron, Erebus, and the Vostok. So that might get a bit of a pain for that mixer. Do you reckon?
Well, they'll be a lot lower than Eurorack levels in terms of the level they work at.
Does the Vostoks? Because I mean that is literally just pretty much like loads of Eurorack inside one box. Would that be? I don't know. Would that be running then lower than average Eurorack because Tom's put it all together as a as a voice, but patchable voice?
I'm not sure. Really not sure with that. It'd be something to ask Tom, definitely.
Yeah.
If you based it off of any MS-20 circuits, those are much closer to line level internally than Eurorack level. A lot of old modular synth designs were more line or even +4 audio levels inside. Eurorack's actually kind of the odd guy that they said, let's make audio the same levels our control voltages so you can interchange in between them. But as a result, anyone who brings in a really faithful like surge module into Eurorack expects a much lower audio level than the rest of Eurorack pumps out. So you're talking about the MS-20 filter in the Vostoks. If he did use Korg circuits as inspiration, there's a chance it's going to be closer to line level. Because I used to have an MS-20 I played live, and I would put audio through its filter as part of a live thing, and it was level matched. It's what it expected.
Ah, right. That's interesting. That's one thing I didn't realize. So Eurorack is always at a higher level than probably just a standard synthesizer and sampler and so forth.
Yes, yeah. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where these. I'll pull a few images up for those that maybe haven't seen these sorts of things. If I go back through these tabs as we've been talking about various things.
Yeah, I saw that Main Key is still doing his Please Exist transformer module that goes back and forth between audio level and Eurorack level using transformers, which means you can also overdrive and saturate them. And it's passive, it doesn't even need power. And there's like 4 of them, I think, in one module. So that's one option, is putting something like that in.
Yeah.
It's bidirectional.
Yeah, I've not seen that one, actually. I saw Cylon Labs were working on a transformer-based one. There's the Vermona TIA 4, which is absolutely stunning. It's slightly bigger than maybe people want. There's the ALM SBG that will drop a Eurorack signal down enough to interface with a guitar pedal, gives you a dry-wet blend, and then bring a pedal back in and bump it up enough. It also handles CV to expression pedal voltages as well. There's the Dope4 one, which again takes a level in, can attenuate it down, bring the level back, bring the signal back and bump it back up. There's a Suestopol, which has the benefit of an envelope follower on it as well. Ladic make a 4 HP dual line input, and there's also the Animodule, is it line amp? I think it's 2 HP. That might be the way to go, actually. Let me pull this back up. If you wanted to interface modular, that might be the way to do it. So we'll take a line level in and give enough clean boost to get up to Eurorack levels.
Yeah, that's a nice tiny solution. I was thinking about the Make Noise Rosie as well. I know a lot of people use that.
Yeah, you've the benefit of the queuing and the effects loop on that as well.
Yeah.
So on that then, Ben, could I just put everything through something like that, get it all up to line level, and then I sort of know I'm playing on a playing level field to put it into the Erica then?
Yeah, so you'd be taking in the line from the Erebus and the Vostok and the Digitact. You'd need 2 of them if you were going to do the Digitact in stereo, because that's 2 channels. So 1 for Erebus, 1 for Vostoks, and then another 2 for the Digitact. But yeah, you could then just plug those in and know that you're right up at Eurorack levels. If later down the line you get an oscillator or something else in Euro, you're going to be working at the same voltages, you could then plumb everything in to the Erica Fusion mixer.
Well, that's a big tip for me then, isn't it? Because really, because next I want to start building out a Eurorack system, but I obviously like to integrate it with all the other kit. So really, those are the first couple of modules I should be looking at, really, aren't they?
I'd say so. I know people that plug, things like a microbrew or an MS-20 straight into Eurorack filters, and it will filter. It's not like it won't work, but you're nowhere near the optimum level that these circuits were designed to work at. So you're much closer to any noise. If you're 10 times lower than the optimum input, you're right. You're 10 times closer to the noise floor of that system. So you want to get everything kind of integrated. Right. Coming back out of modular, all you need to do is drop the level. So you could back off the levels on the Fusion mixer, but you'd sacrifice driving the tube as much. Yeah. Any passive attenuation, little in line. Have I got one somewhere? These work great, and I take these out to all the trade shows we go and cover. These RYO passive. They call them air attenuators. Simple, plug an input in. You've got the little micro pot for attenuation and then an out. Entirely passive. That will drop anything enough to go into anything else from full signal to off. And they're cheap. If you don't mind those dangling in your cables, that is, but I don't.
Nice. Chris, just to get your take on the pedals, what are your top few pedals that you really like, maybe majoring on the reverb side of things?
You know, I've honestly, I don't use pedals anymore. When I played bass, I had like a big pedal board full of stuff. But I've kind of either gone modules or rack mounts, so I'm afraid I'm not much help. I do agree that Eventide Space or the Strymon Big Sky or Blue Sky, it would be the way to go for reverb. But I admit I haven't been keeping up on pedals too much.
There's the one on the Big Sky that really sold me was the Peter Dyer demo, who goes out and tours with a lot of pop acts as a keys player. I'll mute the audio because I don't want to leave it playing, but there's a lot, you know, typical YouTube demo, but very good. The playing's very nice. There's some synth line, arpeggiated stuff. He's running a Prophet 12 through it. You know, they take you through the hall and the room and some of the more out there effects. I think there's some Korg Volkers at some point. Running the Rhodes through it. That's not a Swarmatron, is it? I can't remember what that's called. But yeah, if you put Strymon Big Sky, Peter Dyer, anyone that doesn't want one afterwards would surprise me. It's a really good demo, but it shines. I got the Big Sky home after finding a deal on one online, and it sounded like this. It wasn't a demo where you get home and go, oh, I can't play like him, so this doesn't sound anywhere near as good. The quality of the reverb shone straight away. Yeah,
I have to say, I think the Blue Sky and the Big Sky were my, you know, after sort of like intensive digging into YouTube, were two of my favourites. I thought, you know, they really, really do sound good.
Same with the Eventide Space. It seems to be you're either one or the other. Like you're either Nike or Adidas or whatever. People that have a Space seem to think Space is best. People that have a Big Sky seem to think that's the one. And there's some good videos with Adrian Utley of Portishead with the Eventide Space, showing it off with, I think, a Micro Brute or some, you know, a synth. So that's worth checking out.
So bringing it back, I know I'm going all over the place with you, but bringing it back to the Play One, the mixer, that Video SR, ADSR, I can't say his name.
ADSR.
That's it. I mean, it does look good, and I've looked at all the videos on it, and I mean, he's using really good quality analog circuitry in there. I mean, it does sound good. I mean, it's a lot of money, but do you think something like that is worth gunning for? I mean, I know it might be nice to keep your mixer in with your Euro-Rack stuff, but I mean, it looks quite fiddly at the moment, anything going down that route. So do you like the Play One?
I haven't played on it, but it's a DJ mixer, which isn't, you know, I've no issue with it being a DJ mixer, but that doesn't really kind of appeal to me. I think Phil VCO ADSR doing the kind of techno that he is, it allows him to mix and shape in the way that he is. I mean, he's one of the only people for me that's getting modular techno as good sounding as like a boiler room DJ set. I think he's absolutely nailed it. Both in his musical choices, his sound design and his mixing. He's kind of the only guy, I think, purely in modular, making that kind of quality. It sounds like a produced track when you hear him play live. Everything sounds like it's EQ'd and compressed, and it really is, for me, the only person doing it. I don't think that's entirely this mixer, though. I know he's really finely tuned that system and performed with it a lot. I mean, you get filters per channel, you know, low and a high pass filter per channel. You've all the headphone queuing. I'd say probably not yet for where you're at effects-wise and system-wise. It's a hell of a lot of money that I think you probably better spend elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge amount of money, isn't it? it's one of those things that I just thought, oh, I want one of those. And then I seen the price and went, oh my God, that is expensive. But he's even using part of the DJ mix for a sidechain as well, isn't he? Sort of doing a hack on it. I heard him talking about again on one of your, I think it was Playing Out Live, the same video that I watched the other night. So he's using it to wring everything out of it, isn't he? And in quite a clever way.
Yeah, I think he's hacking. Is it potentially a microphone channel, or I'm just looking through the picture?
I think it's a second DJ Q channel. They've got 2 Q channels on it. One for himself and one for handing over to a DJ. And I think he's using one of those. I don't know how, but he's using one of those as a sidechain.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, but I think I get kind of your effects and your general sound fleshed out first.
Yeah.
I'll just throw at you a crazy idea for mixing. This is what I used to do with my live setup. Is I actually had 2 mixers for my live setup, because I used to do dub style live mixing with lots of tracks coming out of Ableton Live and stuff like that. So I'd have a Big Mackie 1604 for my main channels, but I had all my effects off on a separate little, actually Behringer mixer with a Q on it. So I could go ahead and preview my effects before I brought them in and out, then bring them into the mix, and then they just came back into 2 channels on my main mixer. And that way I could just have one mixer. I had 6 effect sends on it, and I could just really tweak the effects ahead of time and treat it then just as another stereo pair coming into the mixer.
Yeah, that's a nice way for control, isn't it?
It worked well live, because live you're just afraid you're flying an airplane and you don't want to crash into something, and that was what worked well for me to divide things up.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about potentially. What I'll do anyway, because we've been about an hour, is just open this up to Q&A with the chat room, whether it's related to this, anything you want to ask any of us, hang on for a little while and see what anyone wants to ask. These patron Q&A things, just for those that are watching, there's kind of no plan really. It's just a monthly hangout. Ed had asked me about this effect stuff already. We've spoken in the past. So I thought, that's good to get on. Chris is an absolute fountain of knowledge for not just Sims, for all sorts of things. I thought it would be good to get Chris on. So if anyone wants to come on next time with a specific question or general theme, you're welcome to. If not, just fire away in the chat. Anything else anyone wants to bring up? Well, we're kind of waiting for any questions that may come through.
No, I think I've got sort of a better idea now, because that's one thing I was just absolutely flagging on where to go with effects, because there was just so much choice. But I think I've got a decent direction now, and I think what you've made me think about is actually I'm needing 2 really. One maybe as a overall gluing type of effect, and the other one that will perform well with the Vostok, with what I'm trying to do, which is probably a little bit weird with it, sort of using Scratch Mixer and lots of effects. But I think that Verb looks to be a stunning combination with it all, and I think then something like maybe Blue Sky, Big Sky on the general sort of mix, then add into the Erebus a bit of the delay in there, and I think I'm probably going to have it covered. Yeah,
you've a lot to explore, definitely. One thing, well, for anyone that can get there, but for you as well, Ed, on the 18th, Ross Lamon's holding his Synth Meet, Bells and Whistles, Crackles and Pops in Castor, Peterborough. It's probably about 2.5, 3 hours away from you, but if you can get there, VCU ADSR and the like will be there. Same to anyone else for local Synth Meets. I've obviously not been to them all, but they've been great places for questions like this that I've had in the past. And actually then having someone show me how they would patch this stuff, and then I go home and I'll play around and maybe hit them again on Facebook. If you can get there, Ed, I'd try and do that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be 2 days after my my exhibition, and I've got to stay a day after that. But I could get up there, that's for sure. I wanted to come to Synthfest and came down with some sort of chronic lurgy last minute, which was a killer, because like I'm trying it's really weird. Every symphony this year I've tried to get down to, something has happened, and I was like, Synthfest, I'm in there. And I tell you what, I couldn't get myself out of bed. It was a nightmare. So, but yeah, I'll try and get up for that. I think that'd be really good.
Yeah. I'll pull the chat window up as we've opened it up. Raffle Sprugger, I'm guessing, saying sometimes feeling a bit overwhelmed by space. How do you guys like simpler, less parameters, reverbs versus the more intricate stuff? I really like the simple stuff. You know, when I mentioned getting a BBD-based delay pedal, I have the Ibanez, is it AM9 or DM9? I forget. And it's level, feedback, delay time, and that's it. And it's great. I like just setting something and leaving it. I really like the Dope spring reverb, and also the Ekdal is very nice. If spring reverb's something that people want, you've got CV in for pretty much everything. There's an LFO on it that has an output, so if you're not using the LFO, you can patch that back out to something else. Just CV over the filter on it, which sounds great. You could leave the reverb blend off, and it's just a really nice filter. Maybe a bit of a big filter compared to a module, but yeah.
I've been dribbling over one of those. I just so want one of those. They look absolutely amazing. Are they really good? So they're good fun?
Yeah, it's great. And actually, someone brought up the other day that you should be getting basically the springs without being in a metal box become an antenna effectively, but I'm not getting much noise through it. They sound great. The input drive's really nice. The output stage offers quite a lot of gain. There's external CV over things like the LFO, which affect the filter. The filter blends, and you can use the LFO to blend between low pass, band pass, and high pass. It's just really well thought out, and it sounds great. The key for me with any spring reverb is to not drive the input too much, because then any transients or percussion that you've got, you know, it makes the springs slash around because you're hitting it so hard, and then it's that really obvious boingy 1950s sci-fi effect kind of thing.
It's got a beautiful liquidy underwater type of tone, hasn't it? It's just awesome.
Yeah, and you can just back that input gain off and just sort of keep the springs just going without really excessively letting them slap around.
That is definitely one on my list that I want to get. That's without a doubt.
Mm. What about you? What about you, Chris, for simpler effects, less control?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that, because I sometimes get a little carried away with wanting to control things. Like I'm really interested in new AGH 12-stage phaser coming out, because you can take the feedback loop outside of the module and put it to like a wave folder or something and bring it back in. So I like possibilities like that. But, you know, for simple effects, I'm looking at my studio rack right now, and so I'm just kind of musing. You know, I've got the cheap MIDI verbs that I just throw in everything. I've got an old Akai PEQ6, because there's nothing like a graphic or a multi-band parametric equalizer to go ahead and just carve out your sound and really help make it sit into a mix. And I've got a couple of Zoom multi-effects devices that just, particularly for when I'm playing live, I just need to pull up a preset and then not worry about it when I go over and do something else. That's kind of like me on the basic effects. The other thing I was going to interject of what you're talking about with spring reverbs is I'm finding more and more that managing the input levels, like the secret to dealing with modular synth in general, and also external effects devices, it can make a big difference on how the module performs, whether or not you're backing off on the level or purposely overdriving it. And I think a lot of people just are used to cranking up input levels all the way, all the time. And spending some time backing off can just get you a range of sounds you didn't know was in the box.
Yeah, there's some great videos from yourself on that. Some filter demos, actually, where you show how it responds differently with different inputs. People should go check those out. Again, whether you like that filter or not, both Chris's videos and mine, blowing my own trumpet, there's a lot to take from this stuff. Whether you want such and such's new low-pass filter or envelope, there's probably going to be some patch tricks in there. And certainly with yours as well, Chris, I will just watch everything you put out, as I do with a few people, whether I want it or I'm interested or not. You know, I'm interested in synths, but it might be a module that I've already got. But there's usually something I'll pick up on from everyone else. So definitely just consume the content from everyone. Pulling up the chat again, kind of off topic for effects, but that's totally fine. Evertoaster asks, what CV mixers do you like the most? I'll let you go with that one, Chris.
I'm trying to find. I am in the market right now for a CV mixer for my modular. So this is kind of like the good time to talk to me. I do have a little verbose pan and scan, and there's things about it I like, but because you can control voltage, the panning, and the levels. But unfortunately, it only needs like plus or minus 1 volt or 2 volts to do the full swing on the pan. It's just way too fiddly to get modulation hooked up to it. Even just a small tweak in an attenuator makes it fly off the scale. So I've relegated it to my drum mixing section in the upper right now. But I'm looking for, the real trick is trying to find something that has more than 4 channels, that has CV on a lot of stuff, that doesn't take up a whole row of your modular. And that's where I'm getting really hung up right now. And I think I like, like the WMD Performance Mixer, but it's huge. But it's one of the better ones I've seen. I'm about to go buy a Sputnik 6-channel mixer just because that's what I need in terms of just a couple channels to CV pan, CV on the levels. The rest of the stuff, usually I'm not panning, but a couple things I do want to CV. I think that's going to be the best trade-off for me for HP versus channels versus CVing enough stuff for what I want to do.
Yeah, I took that as mixers for CV, not CVable mixers, but we'll go with CV.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I don't know which was right. Evertoaster, please let us know which one you wanted, but I'll stick with the angle Chris went. The Happy Nerd in pan mix is really good because it's 1 CV per channel that is pan or volume, and I don't find I always need both. Sounds that I'm panning around, and you can always put a VCA before the channel to do the level and then CV the pan. I don't find it much of an issue that it's one or the other. That's great for 6 channels, high quality, built really nicely. The Sputnik's very good, actually. I've got the Sputnik at the minute. WMD Performance Mix is glorious, but it's an investment in space and cash. I haven't tried the pan and scan, but I know the other Verbos stuff is of a quality, so...
Yeah. The one thing I'll throw in, if we are to get back to CV mixers, is... and getting back to what I was talking about with terms of input levels, if you get a CV mixer, look for one that can amplify the input, not just attenuate it. Because I'm finding more and more I need to boost a 5-volt envelope to drive an input that expects 8 volts. I've got to boost the signal level out of a surge wave shaper up a lot to feed it into a filter to get a really nice overdriven sound out of it. So when you're looking for CV mixers, look for the very few that actually can amplify a signal, not just attenuated. And like the Erogenous Tones Levitate's one of those. RYO had something, the Amp Mix, I think they could do that.
The Amp is 4 channels with 2 times gain.
Yeah. And there's more coming out now that do 2 times gain like on one of their channels or have that as an option. And I think that's really an important overlooked feature is you need to boost signals, not just cut them.
Yeah. I really like the Manhattan analog mixers, both the DTM, which is a CP3 based one, and the Dot Mix, which is just a clean 3-channel mixer in 4 HP. A cool thing with CV with the CP3 mixers, because they just kind of hard clip at the top. If you have an envelope coming in, you can take an ADSR to be a kind of fake AHDSR. So instead of attack, decay, sustain, relief, if you clip that top stage, it will attack, hold because it's clipped, then decay, then sustain, then release. And you can put an LFO in with the envelope. So you get in the envelope shape, and then when the LFO voltage is high enough, the whole thing clips and you get a kind of fake hold stage. That can be quite fun. Also really annoying if you don't know where it's coming from and you're adjusting your attack and decay times on your envelope and it's still squaring off at the top and you don't know why. But once you're used to it, it's nice for a few tricks. Ralph Sprugger mentioned blinds, mutable instruments. Blinds, I guess ALM, their quad mixer, the VCA4P from Bubble Sound, that'll do 4 channels as a CVable mixer. You can take the mix out. There's a few quad VCAs now. The Erica Sims one's very nice, although that's audio only. The Erica Sims output mixer, the stereo mixer, that will do 4, I think it's 3 stereo channels and 1 channel that's mono, but it's got CV over pan. The black stereo mixer.
Yeah.
That has a little PFL headphone out as well. So you can take a headphone out and flick in the channels and cue them up in your headphones before you bring them in on the mix.
Yeah, I've seriously looked at that one for my system as well.
Yeah, that's great quality, smaller. Just works nicely for me. Any more questions before I kind of start to wrap this up? People watching, fire questions in. Wrap up in 5 or 10 minutes. Well, I'll throw some out there. Does anyone use Rene? Either in the chat or have you used the Rene, Chris?
Yes, I like the Rene. Any
tips for getting going with it? I'm feeling a little bit. I got one in a trade recently, and I'm feeling a little bit slow with it, to be honest.
I don't know if I have to spend more time breaking it down into some videos of it, because when you do videos of these things, that you really learn them from their atomic level. The thing that I've been having fun with Rene is, since you do have the X coordinate and Y coordinate, you can treat it as four row sequencers if you want, for example, is I've been using some algorithmic rhythm generators to trigger which row I'm playing back on Rene, so that like a snare drum coming in will change the row of the sequence being played. So that's one of the things I really like about it, is the ability to tie in changes in the musical line with other things happening rhythmically.
Yeah, I've had some nice. I've got the XY thing going. It's all the other modes and things that I've not really dug into. Like you said, I need Make Noise to ask me to make a video, and then I'll have to really learn it really quick.
Well, the other things like the snake modes and stuff like that, that's kind of fun for improvising. And if you're just trying to, you want your machine to come up with inspiration for you while you're in the middle of doing something. But I've really looked at it much in terms of that XY, and I really want to do something with that grid as opposed to go come up with interesting patterns for me.
Yeah, I found a steady clock to the X axis and then a slower Euclidean pattern for the Y was quite nice.
Yeah.
Just to get these kind of more organic, well, not organic, but non-rigid patterns, as it were.
Yeah, that, and also when I'm playing around with algorithmic generators like the grids and the night scallop, I've also been playing with the like the accent output of the grids, just to hit another envelope, adding into the filter on a patch too, just so I'm getting some rhythmic accents on the musical lines, not just on the percussion lines.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll wrap up and leave it there for today. Like I said, this is going to be a monthly chat thing. I'm sure I'll have Chris on again. Ed's welcome back as well. Anyone that wants to join the video that has a question that's kind of provides a theme for the topic, even if that's 10 minutes and then we go off on a massive tangent. These will happen each month. Around the start of the month, usually on a Sunday at this time. The poll I did on Patreon, this was the best slot for everyone time-wise. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Feel free to comment on this afterwards. It will be on my Patreon page as a video just for you guys, so I will see any comments on the YouTube video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Anything you want to sign off with? Anything people should check out, Ed?
Where
can they check out your artwork?
Go to edwardball.co.uk. That's my artwork. As I said before, I paint to music, done that for around about 15 years, and now composing my own music to paint to. It's contemporary and abstract. And if any of you guys down in London on the 16th, I'm playing and painting live at Beat, which is a private nightclub just off Regent Street. So they're doing an exhibition until January of my artwork. I'm actually painting live because I throw a lot of paint around. So actually watching me is not like watching paint dry, because I'm throwing loads of paint around. So I'm painting live there, playing live, hopefully, if I can get something together, because this is the tipping point from now on, that I'll start painting to all my own music, whereas before it was painted to other people's music. The big red one you seen earlier on, Ben, that was painted to Goldie's incredible sound of drum and bass, which is called Rhythm. That's the one there, which is one of my favourite pieces. But yeah, so check me out there. And as I say, if you're down in London, I'm just off Regent Street for the opening on the 16th.
You know, Ed, something you should look at is a lot of people really get into self-generating patches on their modulars. where they set up a system that just keeps evolving and playing itself over time. And I think you might find that a really interesting thing to start getting into that approach on modulars, where the system is just developing drones or musical lines and evolving over time, and then just reacting to that.
Yeah, Chris, I think, you know what, I think that's just a really good idea. I think, you know, I want there to be a musicality to some of my stuff, but I'm really, as an abstract artist, I'm really interested in, you know, abstract sounds, soundscapes, and I think that is something that I'd really love to investigate, you know, which I could bring into parts of the painting process, which, you know, would be very Morpheus, wouldn't it? You know, you would not know where that's going. And I think to paint something like that would be very interesting.
Yeah, and the algorithmic stuff does not have to be completely random or abstract, like Douglas Leady's in Tropical Paradise, something like that. It's really possible to do a lot of stuff that's rhythmic oriented or even sequence oriented, like we were just talking about with Renee, that will be evolving drum lines and evolving music lines you can have a lot of fun with, particularly if you had your touche next to you and said, okay, I'm getting really bored of this groove, change. And with the touche, you could change a parameter and have like the percussion pattern go off in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm just like a kid in a sweet shop at the moment, because the possibilities of where I can go and what I can do and bringing it into my art practice, you know, and having this holistic loop of, you know, me creating sound, me painting sound, and just something fantastic about it. And so I'm just at that tipping point of starting to do that. I really like the sound of doing that. I think that could be something that I could really flesh out on.
And I'd also say for the other musicians, you know, look at teaming up with dancers, painters, etc., to do a combined live venue. Like we're friends with a master calligrapher in Dublin by the name of Dennis Brown, and he'll bring on live performers and then just have this huge canvas where he'll do a lot of abstract mark making, it's almost graffiti-like, in response to the music that's playing. So I think for people who have been looking for a way of playing out with their modular, but don't want to do just another techno gig or something like that, or can't get one because there's so many people trying to do it, look at teaming up with other artists and other venues, be they VJs or even dancers or painters, and just do something multimedia where you're supplying the music.
Yeah, Heimbach did something with a dancer recently in Berlin. I saw the video on Heimbach's YouTube channel. One question just before we sign off with anything from you, Chris, that I forgot to bring up. Sorry about that. Mark27 asks, well, states, I try to leave digital processing to the post/in the box and limiting my modular to analog effects to reduce the number of times a given sound goes through the A to D to DA stage, the analog to digital and back digital to analog. Is anyone else working in this way? I couldn't care less in modular. I've never experienced any issues with going, you know, hopping from 5 digital modules in a line. So care less sounds like I'm being rude. I don't mean that, but I've never had any issue coming in and out of lots of digital modules. So I really don't think about it when I'm patching. How about you, Chris?
It's easy. You can design a bad digital module and you can design a bad analog module. And you can design good modules. It's easier to get in trouble with bad digital design because it's easier to clip them. They may not have as nice of a saturation characteristic. And you may run into some issues if their sample rate's not high enough, or you get some weird aliasing artifacts that you may not want. Sometimes you do want it. But with a well-designed digital module, there's no reason to be prejudiced against it. You look at something like what Paul's doing with synthesis technology and his new oscillators, for example, that are just amazing. You look at even what Rossum's doing with Morpheus filter. It has a very different sound to it, but that's because it's just a very different filter topology. So I wouldn't be prejudiced against digital. I'd be prejudiced against bad digital.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, there's poor analog as well. If you are, Mark, really interested in analog effects only, Ian Boddy's Tone Science is a release on DIN, well worth checking out. A surge system, a Eurorack system, and all analog effects. There's a Swayman, phaser, some spring reverb, some analog delays. Amazing. I mean, the palette isn't necessarily the analog only effects, but it's a really good piece of music. Each piece is generative, but each piece is a scale. So you may have said, I want a C natural minor scale for this piece, and it's all quantized and musical, but all self-generating. The next piece may be in a Dorian mode or a Phrygian scale or whatever mode each one is and key each one is. Fantastically musical, but still on that abstract fringe, self-generative, Really nice piece of music. But yeah, in general, as Chris said, I wouldn't worry about it. The most noise I get out of any effect is the Dope for Spring reverb. And annoyingly, when I moved house, it got a lot worse. And I was at a synth meet and someone said, take the spring tank and literally just start rotating it around, and then all of a sudden the noise will stop, and I can't get it to stop. It does change. You can, that centimeter change in rotation or position it's on top of the case, so it's not in next to the power supply, and it does change. But I kind of like that. If I'm running the spring earlier down a patch, I can filter that in and out. I can kind of compress it and distort it a little bit. It works quite well. But yeah, all the digital effects are really clean that I've got so far.
I'll drive you really crazy with that, Ben. Wendy Carlos ended up building a Faraday cage around her apartment. And she said when she did that, her Moog modular suddenly became quiet. The hiss went away.
I am looking to extend the house I'm in. And
can you imagine meeting Wendy Carlos in a Faraday cage? That'd be one to do, wouldn't it?
I don't need any more ideas for this. I mean, it's a spring reverb. It's not big and lush and real. It's fine. I don't need to start thinking about this. Anything from you, Chris? Learningmodular.com. I'll pull up your website.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been spending a lot of time lately getting my courses streaming from my website rather than people having to get a subscription elsewhere to go see them. I had a lot of people say, I want to pay once and watch them whenever I want to. So that's been my focus the last month, and I'm done with that now. And now I'm getting back to playing around with modules. I just played around with a couple rhythmic generation modules. I've got another one I'm not allowed to talk about that's on its way. And I've got the ultra random analog in the case next to record, and that's because of you, Ben. You've raved so much about the SSFU array that I had to play with that. And then after that, I'm playing around with some new oscillators. I really love, for example, I'm late to the party with the WMD SSF Spectrum, but wow, that thing sounds massive. I'm really happy with that one.
Yeah, great. Well, go check out Chris's courses, Ed's paintings. As usual, I have lots of videos coming up as well. Yeah, fire away with any questions anywhere for all of us. I'm sure everyone's happy to answer anything.
I'd just like to say, Chris, I think you do amazing videos, really. I mean, I caught you on lynda.com because I had a subscription on there anyway, but I'll be definitely subscribing to your content. You've got a nice way of teaching it all that really sinks in well. So I found it a pleasure, and I think I think anyone who's starting to learn about synthesis can't go wrong with your content.
I really appreciate that, because on the one hand, I was an engineer and I used to design this stuff. On the other hand, I know that feeling of being a beginner and going, what is everyone talking about? And I'm really sympathetic to that.
Oh, it was a nightmare. Can you imagine? I went to Tom's. I got this Vostox Deluxe. I thought I knew about synthesis because I had a CSO5, Yamaha CSO5 when I was 16. So I thought, oh yeah, I know about synthesizers. So I'm hightailing it home with this thing that looks like it could launch Russian nuclear submarines, right? And I get it and I'm thinking, oh God, this sound's going to be amazing. And I got like the horriblest fart out of tune sounds ever after about 2 hours of patching. I was like, ah! So, then it's down the rabbit hole, isn't it? Of like, okay, I know nothing about synthesis. How does this work? And dredging through, it was painful at first, but finding like people like Ben and you, it was just a breath of fresh air, really. And I found I've learned more, sort of quickly by looking at all this content and especially your content.
I really appreciate it. We have a saying, time is money and the exchange rate sucks. So I'm just trying to help people save time.
Yeah, I'd mirror all that for Chris. And as I said, whether you're a beginner kind of stage, as you are, Ed, just diving into this kind of world of modular from other backgrounds or not, there's a lot to be taken from everybody's videos that's doing this kind of stuff. I still pick up tips from everybody's stuff. Hopefully other people do mine, experienced or otherwise. So whether it's a VCA you're not interested in or an envelope that someone's kind of reviewing, it's well worth checking out. There may be some tips to be taken. I think the endless learning is the real appeal of this stuff, to me.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It is complete. Go on, sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, and I watch your stuff all the time. I mean, mainly you're responsible for making me a very poor man because I end up buying modules after you demonstrate them. But I like that you are bringing a musicality to the stuff, and that's one of the things. A lot of unboxing videos are just like, here's some random knob tweaks. Got it? And like, no. So it's nice to hear things in a context. That's what I appreciate about your videos too.
Yeah, I try and always get a couple of examples in there after doing the, if it's a filter, here's all the sweeps, here's all the how it sounds. I think you need a few patches to kind of bring it round and some examples. And it's great that we're all talking to each other. I did have someone say, I can't believe you comment on each other's stuff. It's like, well, we're not kind of enemy companies rivaling each other. It's a really lovely thing that everybody's doing. And I'm really glad it's that way. Cool. Right. We'll sign off. Check out everybody's stuff, learningmodular.com, edwardball.co.uk. YouTube or Patreon for me is your best place at the minute. Cheers for watching, everyone. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Take care. Thanks a lot for having us.
Bye.